Hey everybody, Bobby Umar here. I'm with Nick Gibson, and on behalf of DYPB, Discovery Personal Brand, we're excited to have you as part of our great webinar training today on activating your values. It's going to be an amazing time, and we're just getting started and getting set up while people arrive. And once a lot of people arrive, we'll start chatting up. In the meantime, one of the things I love to do with the way I run webinars, and Nick was also one of the co-hosts today, is just sharing some gratitude, right? So I'm grateful to be here with this webinar and see Nick here as well. But if you want to share some gratitude while we're waiting to get started up, you can share on social media using our DYPBTO hashtag, or sorry, our handle. And if you have questions, you can always put them in the chat box on the right here. And there's also question box below that you can also leverage if you'd like. All right, but that's kind of how we've set up for today, and we're excited to have people around with us. How about you, Nick? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's much better to be inside, nice and warm, not driving on the streets of Toronto. So I'm pretty happy about that, and of all things.
Yeah, I think a lot of Canadians have gratitude around the weather. So glad to be inside.
Yeah.
So that's great. I'm just looking at a couple of tech issues. I want to make sure I address this one. So, okay. See if I can fix that. All right. Well, we're still waiting for people to show up, but let's. While we're doing that, we'll just if people show up, they can certainly start chatting away, and then we'll get started on the train. But let's give people a couple more minutes, and we'll figure that out. All right. You can also watch Nick too for people who might be chatting on the box and stuff. But
okay,
let's see what I can do here. Okay. Just an FYI, Nick, Nina just sent a message saying that some people can't get in.
Yeah, I'm getting messages too.
And I'm not sure what's going on. So I'm gonna send you a link on Slack. So I just went to the site. I just sent this on Slack. The only thing I can think of is that I just messaged Webinar Ninja saying what's going on.
Okay, do we see, is there anyone online right now, or would we see that?
No, we are live. We are live, right? So we are live. So people should be here. And Nina says she registered, got the link, and now she's saying she can't get in, which is weird. So I just messaged Webinar Ninja, which sucks. I can't believe this happens. Okay, so this is ridiculous. Everyone registered, but they can't get in.
And you're gonna set record when we get started too, right?
It's recording now.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
So people are saying they registered, but now the link won't let them in. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting from people too.
Okay. I'm talking to them right now at Webinar Ninja. Can you send them this link that I sent? Here, hold on. It's the webinar link.
Yeah, it's the exact same one you just sent on the team lead thread, right? Because I sent that out to everyone.
They're asking for webinars private or public. Well, it's private because
Can we just make it public, and then it might be easier for people to join?
well, the reason why you can't make it no, we've already started. The reason why it's not public is because then other people show up for free. And the good news is the private webinars have extended. Quick links. Where's the quick links? Okay. Oh shit. Okay. That's out. Okay. Here's another link. Nick, try this one. Do you see it? Send that to your friends. I'm going to send a message to Eventbrite again. I'll send a message through Eventbrite right now. And she's in.
Yep. Nina's in.
Okay, so send that to your friends. I'm going to email every attendee so they know. Okay, just send an email to everybody. Is anyone else in? Nina's in?
That looks like we got a few people in here now.
Okay, great.
We got, looks like we got 4.
Great.
Thanks everyone for being patient.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. A second here. I do a little bit of tech stuff here, and then we're good to go. Okay, so, all right, wow, there we go. So people are in now. That's great. Glad to see. Okay, good. Another person. People are coming in now. Great. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our DYPB first webinar of 2019. Very excited. My name is Bob Umar. I'm the CEO of Discover Your Personal Brand. I'm with Nick Gibson, who is our host and also part of the DYPB team. I'm sorry for the late start, a little bit of tech issues, but now they're all sorted out. Glad things have worked out. Glad to have you guys here. So I'm going to talk a bit about, just in terms of housekeeping, I'm going to talk a bit about DYPB to get started, and I'll introduce Nick, who's going to go through the content for today. So we're very excited about that. And in the meantime, hope you guys are doing well. Share something you're grateful for. You can always tag us on DYPBTO across social media. And so very excited to have that. Glad to have Nick here. You excited, Nick? You pumped up?
Ready to go.
All right. So let me actually just get going. And before I get going, one of the things I'll say is you can ask questions throughout this webinar. You can ask them below and in the chat box to the right. There's also a question box below if you want to use that as well. So you're always welcome to share what you want, share thoughts, or share comments, talk to each other. That's totally fine. Just make sure you don't drown me and Nick out. But by all means, chat away and have fun, because we're here to teach you the stuff that's really important to us. So what I want to get started with is talk a bit about what DYPB is doing. So we have served already 1,000+ people in the last year. We did 8 LinkedIn local meetups. We did 4 workshops. We did panel events and a community conference, and it was really great. It's been a lot of fun for us. And one of the things that we are doing, and I'm actually going to take away our video for now. One of the things we're doing is that we serve individuals and organizations who want more focus. They want to have more clarity, direction, purpose in their life. They want more alignment. They want to have more meaning, more values alignment, more passion, fulfillment with what they're doing. And they want to have more impact in their life. They want to have more achievement, success, make it part of the story and build a legacy. And so the personal brand journey is really about helping people do that. We help you discover, develop, and deploy your personal brand. And we do that in different ways. But our why statement is this: everyone deserves to own their life, discover their greatness, and leave a legacy. What that means is that every single person needs to have a life that's aligned with who they are. Take their greatness from great to greater and greatness and to greatest, and to leave that legacy that they all want to have, whether it's an organization or whether it's as an entrepreneur or whether it's even in their personal lives. And so our purpose really is this: what makes you extraordinary? Well, it's time to find out. DYPB moves you to achieve a life of purpose and impact through your personal brand journey. And that's why we're here today. That's why we do all our other events. And so how we do that and implement that is really this. We're running 6 LinkedIn local meetups throughout the year. We're doing 10 live workshops in person where we dive deep for 2-3 hours. We're also doing 10 online seminars like this one, which is the first one of the year. We also are running 4 masterminds for 2 days long each, an awards gala, and we're also running in-house training as an organization. So we're doing all the stuff to achieve our purpose in terms of doing this whole plan. So we're very excited about that, and this is kind of how we're trying to make an impact in your professional lives as well as the professional lives of others. So we thank you for joining us here, and without further ado, I'll now transition over to Nick, who's going to start with his slides and go through the amazing content he's prepared for us. So hope you guys enjoy, and let's go to it, Nick.
Well, thanks very much, Bobby. And again, thanks everyone for being patient and getting us through all the issues that we had just to get started here today. Sort of like the commute some of you might have been working through if you're in the Toronto area, the snow and the wonderful ice that's all out there. So this was our version of an online delays of commute. So thanks for sticking with us through that. So let's get started. Welcome everyone, as I said, to the Activate Your Values to Start Your Change Journey webinar. I'm looking forward to taking you through the content we have here today, but also having your engagement throughout the webinar, and at the end where we'll have a Q&A, as Bobby referred to earlier. So this webinar is focused on getting you started. For those who have attended our recent LinkedIn Local, you'll notice some similar themes and frameworks, but we'll go into a little bit more depth as well. So that being said, though, we only have an hour, a little bit less than an hour for a full webinar this afternoon. So the goal will be to show you the tools, get you to work on it a little bit, and then you'll be able to understand and implement it on your own time. So what should we expect today? We'll start on why we're here and our specific goals for today. Then we'll go into the 3 main sections with specific exercises: knowing your story, knowing your values, and activating your values. And the last one is where we'll go into depth in particular. And while we will be happy to take questions throughout the webinar, we will be able to have some questions at the end and Q&A as well, as I mentioned before. Oh, did I lose my slides here? Let's try again. You got a little face of me in my living room here. So let's get this conversation started here, though. Why are you here today? Why did you pay your hard-earned dollars, but in particular, devote your precious attention to spending this hour with us today? Let's chat about that in the comments. You see the comments on the side here, and love to see what you guys are thinking and what brought you here in the first place. Get a few people to get their responses in. We're doing this in the chat box. All right, Seth is looking to understand what values mean and practical tools to identify his own. That's great. And looks like Bobby is trying to get in there as well, with really focusing on the activation part, which is great. And Nina, great point. I think having a clear sense of your values, not only kind of intuitively, but also kind of front of mind, is critical for success in life, whatever success means to you. Anyone else want to chip in their thoughts there? We'll give you another moment to contribute your thoughts. So I think what we're seeing here is, again, people looking for tools, but also knowing the importance of what this is all about. And I think, to many people, it's understanding where to even start. To Bobby's actually comment that just popped up here. That's great. Great timing there, Bobby. So people understanding where to start here, I think is critical, and all this feedback is great. Let me tell you a little bit about why I'm doing this and why I think it's so important that you are all here today. So we face a world that in many ways has never been better, and yet with numerous substantial, complex, and difficult challenges increasingly threatening us all. Poverty, climate change, war, economic inequality and empowerment, mental health, hate, discrimination, so much more, at a speed and complexity that we've never faced before. So in a sea of gloom and doom we can be bombarded with in the media, it would be easy to remain disempowered, overwhelmed, and unhappy. But we can't accept that outcome, though. And if you being here today is a testament, in fact, to the fact that there are people who, despite our own individual challenges and tribulations, want to reflect upon our place in this solution to these challenges, our place in how we all live lives in line with our values, and in doing so, serve our communities in the broader world around us by solving real problems. And this is why I'm optimistic. There is beautiful light upon the horizon, despite the dark clouds of adversity that gather around us. But what we need from you is to get started. Get started on this change journey by activating your values. And we can't wait one more minute. We know you're up to the challenge and will flourish in its face. So what are we trying to accomplish today? In short, we're going to go through and learn useful frameworks for values activation. And this is a sprint version. While we will be doing some of the work as we go, it'll be mostly for you to get enough of an understanding so you can take it back and work on it for yourself. Of course, there are a number of ways to do this, and the best results often come from more in-depth work than we will be able to cover today. However, our goal today is just to get you started, get this ball rolling. Use the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule to get the results from the little bit of effort that gets you started. So we'll break down these frameworks into chunks, show you how to take immediate action, and then you'll be able to replicate the process for yourself. Okay, so let's start by asking, what are we talking about when we say values anyways? Like what is this all about? What are they? Why do they matter? Well, when we get into these conversations and reflections, we often hear words like principles, morals, ethics, and of course, values. And all these words get thrown around very easily. And the question is, what are we talking about today? So we're going to try to keep things very simple. From your perspective, what are the guardrails most critical? Tell us that it is critical for flourishing as individuals, and history tells us, and science as well, tells us that values are critical drivers of human behavior more broadly. So getting this right with values is very important for flourishing for us all and the world around us. This is why we're starting with values. So today we're going to be particularly interested in values because it also is the way for us to start your change journey to make a positive impact in the community and broader world around you. So I want you to start your change journey by knowing your story so you can know your values, then you can activate your values. And this is a cycle, as you can see. For every time you activate your values, you will learn a bit more about yourself and the world around you, and you'll be able to activate even better the next time. This is a lifelong, ongoing process, one that you can derive a lot of meaning from, but also one that takes some time to bear fruit. So this is our critical framework for the webinar today, as I mentioned in our agenda. All right. So what the heck is this? Any guesses? Let's throw some guesses in the comments here. What the heck is this? The answer is a tough one, but it's kind of purposely so. No, Bobby, not my backyard. I wish I had a backyard. All right, Nina's going on the metaphorical route. That's a good start. Seth's garden. I mean, yeah. That would probably be true to some extent. Our dirty lives, Bobby. Okay, we're not going there. We're not going dark today. We're gonna make this positive. Cave on a farm. Yeah, to some extent that's partially true. Not quite getting at the answer that I'm looking for quite yet. Oh, there are fences. Ooh, is that a bit of a diversion? Okay. So as I said, the answer is a little bit tough to get to, and purposely so. But the answer actually is, this is a bamboo tree. Oh, really, you say? Where the heck is the bamboo tree? It's under the soil. It's waiting to break through the surface. And anyone know how long it takes for a bamboo tree to break through the surface? Let's have some guesses in the comments here. Quickly here, no Googling, just right off the top. Okay, Bobby says 10 days. A day. Okay, that's a cave on thinking. A month. Okay, we got it all around the board here. How long does it take for that first sprout for the bamboo tree to make it through the surface? 3 months. Okay, we got anywhere between a day to 3 months so far. Any additional thoughts? Okay, I'm gonna cut this off here because I don't want the people to be cheating Google, because it'll probably come up with it as the very first result if you go into Google. But the answer is actually 5 years. Yeah, good job, Bobby. It's 5 years. So how about we take a guess as to how long it takes for the bamboo tree to grow nearly 100 feet? Okay, so throw your guesses in the comments for this one. Again, no cheating. How long does it take for the bamboo tree to grow nearly 100 feet? Less than 5 years. An eon, a year. Okay. Okay. Seth is bewildered and perplexed by the 5 years it takes. Bobby loves always learning something new. What are our guesses for how long the bamboo tree takes to get to 100 feet? We got a couple guesses in there already. Okay. So the answer for this one is around 5 weeks. 5 weeks. So we have a plant that takes over 1,500 days just to sneak above the soil. And then we have about a month and a half, this plant gets to 100 feet. So why does this matter? It matters because this is exactly how your values activation journey will likely look like at first. You'll usually have some small quick wins to get started, but the real value for you and the people around you is in the long term, after you have laid the groundwork. So put in a different way, our task today is working on the growth below the surface. So let's get started with your story. I love this Maya Angelou quote. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And for those of you who may not know who Maya Angelou is, get on YouTube right after this webinar and check her out. She's a beautiful soul inside and out and is worth listening to. In particular, search "Be a Rainbow" in somebody's cloud, and you will not regret it, I assure you. So our personal stories are critical to us to understand our values. So let's get started by figuring out how to put our life story together. I'm going to propose two options for you to complete in the know your story portion. The first option is the because of that exercise, and we're going to do the because of that exercise together in a moment. There's another option, and it's the in-depth option. And I recommend that you do interviews with people, key people in your life, to understand your life from a more rounded perspective. I can provide you with some free follow-up resources if you'd like, and appreciate some templates on questions and other recommendations as to how to make this work for you. But the critical part of this exercise are the questions, really strong questions, and a good cross-section of people from your life. So kind of 3 to 5 people who represent a good cross-section of your life. And from there, you have the freedom to decide how you will structure it. But again, I'm happy to share best practices as mentioned. So let's do because of that. So this exercise is very simple, but also very useful. I find it is best done with a partner out loud, but for today, we will allow you to do it yourselves on a notepad or on your computer if you wish. You start with something from your childhood. So one sentence about your past. So example for me would be, I grew up in a rural area. Then you add, because of that. So it will be, I grew up in a rural area because of that. Then that is followed up by another statement that you think would logically flow based on your life. And you complete these statements, at least 10 of them in a row, and that will give you a good foundation, a good starting point for your life story. So using a notepad for yourself or on your computer or even in the chat function if you wish, I'll give you a few minutes to start at least your first 2 to 3 statements. In the meantime, I'm going to give you an example of mine. So if you're stuck or you want some further clarification. So here is little Nick and my because of that story. Apparently little Nick liked wearing ties and smiling was a bit of a challenge for me, but nonetheless, I will start mine because of that story. I grew up in a rural area. Because of that, I had to use my imagination to keep myself busy oftentimes since there was not a whole lot to do. Because of that, I was often living in my head and there was already a shy kid. I was already a shy kid. So I ended up being very introverted. Because of that, I realized I would have to break through some of my introversion by getting involved in things that mattered and that I cared about at school. Because of that, I ended up getting very involved in high school and my student and athletic councils, local advocacy, even some public speaking. Because of that, I realized that I liked getting involved and I liked making a difference for those around me. Because of that, I ended up running for student government in university and became the president of the Students' Union at Laurier. Because of that, I went on to get a job in consulting, mostly because of my leadership experience, but over time realized that it was not for me. Because of that, I ended up throwing out the blueprint that I've been following for my life, doing the conventional thing that everyone expected me to do. Because of that, I ended up founding my venture, Our Better Selves, focused on serving people to activate their values, build community, and become more effective change agents who can work on solving profound challenges around us. Because of that, we are on this webinar today. All right, so that gives you a good, hopefully, a good sense as to what this exercise is all about and how quickly it can, just by connecting some sentences, you can get a sense of your story. Your story can go in a number of different directions. In fact, that's kind of the cool thing about this exercise. I always find that you can do this a little bit differently every single time. You can start with a different starting statement. You can take different paths later on. The key is to go with what comes to mind first, and then you can refine it later. So I'll let you guys, I'm going to give you a moment to work through this a little bit. The first 2 to 3 statements, you don't have to do the full 10 that I did in my example, but how are you all doing? Any questions? Anyone want to throw theirs in the comments? They don't have to, but if you wish, maybe a couple examples in the comments would be great. as I said, I'll give you another moment to work on those first 2 to 3 sentences. Just catching up on the comments here, Bobby, on a stream of consciousness here. Lots of comments. This is great. Yep, and we have some shared experience with rural living. Okay, so we got a couple coming in here. We got Nina's coming in here as well. Seems to be a theme of shy people on this webinar, at least two of us. Oh, Seth just drops the gauntlet here and gets his full one in. This is great. Oh, this is great. It's fantastic how these things connect, right? So Seth goes from saying, I grew up in a small town, to ending with, I left to travel the world, which, you know, between those two things in particular don't seem to be connected whatsoever, but it's those, because of that statements, that keep us connected and kind of strings a story together. Very cool. Very cool. All right, so let's move on to our next section. Again, I love these things coming in. Thanks for the participation, guys. This is fantastic. Move on to our next one here, which is the Know Your Values section. As I talked about earlier, Know Your Values is the second part of our framework. And this quote, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how, Friedrich Nietzsche. It's referenced in the great book, Man's Search for Meaning, which I highly, highly recommend. It is a very deep book, but also one that I think is very important and useful for pretty much anyone to read. And when we understand, or we think about why, we often think about purpose. And that would be useful. That'd be a useful thing to think about. That said, before purpose comes values. Values derive from understanding what you think is most important in life. And from there, purpose can emerge from additional work and reflection. And this quote is profound as well, because it assumes that there are a lot of difficulties in life for us and those around us to endure. But with a why, we don't simply endure, I would argue, we thrive. So let's zero in on knowing your values. So there are a number of ways to work on knowing your values, but I find these 4 options that are incredibly useful. So number 1, the first being, you can simply analyze the information from the work that you did in section 1. So the Know Your Story section, whether you do interviews at some point or because of that, or anything like that. You know, here's some good questions. What seems to be repeating? What seems to be different? Who, where is it coming from? How has it changed? Stayed the same over time? There are a number of ways to analyze this, and if you'd like support on this, I'm happy to follow up with support and resources on this one. Another way to do this is to simply ask yourself, who are the people you admire in the world, and identify 1 to 3 values that they possess. And once you gather a list of 3 to 5 people and 3 up to even 15 potential values, you have a sense as to what you may deem important overall, and you can prioritize from that list. And a third one here is a great tool for this through a site called viacharacter.org, which I'll show in the next slide very briefly. This assessment works on character strengths and is based on positive psychology. So character strengths are not values per se, but they often overlap a fair amount. So they are different things, but they can overlap, so it can be super useful for this exercise. But the last one I'm going to propose here is one that we're going to work through, and certainly we can. I could give you a list of a bunch of different things here if you really wanted to. But this last one here is a reflection exercise that we're going to work on in these 4 areas. So work and education, personal growth and health, leisure, and relationships. So these are kind of the 4 buckets we're going to be thinking about and reflecting on our values here. So before we jump into that exercise, number 3 was the Via Character tool, viacharacter.org. So this is what it looks like. The assessment takes about 10-15 minutes and it's free and easy to use. There are a number of other resources there too, which are fantastic. And I'm also happy to help you guide through all of it if you have any questions, but a great and fantastic resource. All right, let's go into an activity, knowing your values. So using a notepad or other tool for yourself, I want you to consider the following. What are the qualities / expectations that you have for these areas in your life? So work and education, growth and health, leisure, relationships. How would you like to live your life in these areas over time? Think of the values that should guide you in these areas. An example of this would be, getting married could be a goal in the relationships area, but being honest, affectionate, caring, reliable could be how you want to live your life in these areas. Those could be the values that govern how you want to work with relationships. So let me know if you have any questions, but I'm going to give you a moment or so to complete at least one of the sections, and you can finish the remainder of them after this webinar. So I'm going to give you a moment here and also take a quick look at our comments here if there's any questions that are coming through that I can answer in the meantime. Bobby, you can start with anyone you'd like. You can dive into work and education, growth and personal growth and health, leisure, relationships, whichever one you'd like. We're only going to do one. And to your earlier question, Bobby, great question. Yes, I definitely leverage via character assessments for the work that I do with coaching and for my community, which we'll speak to a little bit later on. It's an incredibly useful tool. I leverage the evidence and the science of positive psychology in the work that I do because it's critical and helpful when people think about how they can thrive as individuals and how do we thrive as a broader community and a broader society. So via character assessments at the individual level are great ways to kind of get that ball rolling. Any other questions so far? Again, you're digging into one of these 4 areas and trying to think about what are the key principles, what are the key values, I should say, that will be things that you want to live by in these areas. Okay, so health. You want to be more like healthier, like healthy living in general is something that Bobby finds very important. Be able to be an active person, maybe is even a good way to put it. Again, remember for this webinar, we're not looking for perfection here, nor values that you're going to etch in stone for the rest of your life. Rather, we are putting you through a sprint version of this framework so that you're capable of repeating it for yourself after this webinar. Again, I'll give you another little bit here to complete this, and we'll move on to our next exercise in a moment. Okay. All right. So let's take what you come up with here, your values that you've come up with, into this next exercise. And the final part of our framework is to activate your values. In my opinion, the most critical part of the process. So like Will Rogers said, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. So this is a basic framework. This is the basic framework in the activating your values section, which is to audit, plan, then take action. And this could be as simple as stepping back for a moment and reflecting on yourself, planning a new course of action aligned with your values, and then taking action, all within mere minutes. Like think of an example in your life, maybe a time where you had an outburst with a friend, a partner, a colleague, and then you rectified it. You use this framework in that scenario. Today, we're going to go into more depth, but the basic framework is the same. So I want you to take the values you determined in the previous step and use them for these exercises that we're coming up next. Again, remember that you only need one for these exercises, and it's totally fine for the purpose of this. If you have more, you can choose between one of them, but you're encouraged to repeat these exercises after the webinar is complete. Okay, so in this exercise, you'll be performing an audit. So what you will do is take the values that you have determined from at least one of these 4 areas, okay, and evaluate as best you can how close to the bullseye, essentially, you are with activating and living these values consistently. So, you know, and Bobby mentioned his example earlier around health and being active. In maybe perhaps it's in the personal growth and health area as an example. It could be even be in the leisure area. He would put that dot somewhere that is his assessment of how close he is to the bullseye right now. Okay. So for our purposes today, this will be a bit of a snap judgment, but in my workshops and more direct support, we will ask more tailored, probing questions and take more time on this. However, recall again, our goal today is to get you to take action, get the ball rolling, and build some momentum. So I'll give you a moment to draw your own figures as such if you wish, and identify the corresponding spots in the diagram that make sense for you and your values. So I'll give you a moment to work on that. And Bobby, that's a great question you just had. Would you say the audit and plan are the 5 years of the bamboo tree? That is definitely a big part of it. Definitely a big part of it. Yes, like this whole end-to-end, this whole process, it's replicating this process day after day, from knowing your story, knowing your values, and activating your values. That is all the work being done below the surface, you know, of the seedling of the bamboo tree, for sure. Remember here, honesty is your friend. It doesn't help to just give yourself a good grade just for the sake of things, or on the other side of the equation, not to give yourself any credit and think that you've never done anything ever to activate your values, okay? So honesty helps growth. Honesty helps growth. Some good questions to consider as well are, what are some examples of when you activated this value or did not activate this value adequately in the last 6 months, 6 weeks, or 6 days? So this kind of gives you a sense as to how consistent you may or may not be over time. So can I give you another moment or so to reflect on this, and then we'll move on to our next step. So again, we'll use the example of Bobby. He talked about personal growth and health, and how being active, it would be a value for him, or being, like, we'll just say active as a value. And for me, if I were to use that value in my life, I would say that I would be relatively close to the bullseye. I wouldn't be right on. There's always ways to be improved, but I would say I'm in this sort of the second or third ring of the bullseye, close to the bullseye for me. That's where I put the active value. So that's kind of how it would look if you would to do this for yourself. Okay, so again, remember that this is something that you can replicate outside of the webinar. So we're going to move on to our next step. And that next step is talking about starting your plan. And it's to start with identifying the obstacles that are in front of you. What stands between you and your more activated values? What gets in the way? Your task is to describe at least 3 obstacles that hold you back on any particular value of yours. Perhaps you have more than one obstacle. For this one, let's share the obstacle in the comments. Let's have this a little more interactive. So what are some obstacles that prevent you from activating any one of your values? What are some obstacles that prevent you from activating any one of your values? Okay, so Bobby's talking about time and then just go to the knowledge, whether like knowing how to do something. Okay, so Seth brings up a really good point. Traveling a fair amount and being away from loved ones and friends, it's hard to maintain meaningful relationships and stuff like that with people over video and text, despite any good effort. Nina talks about organizing workload, so just being able to prioritize through things. So time, I would say that might be a good way to put it. Finances often comes up as one for sure. Fear can be one. What are your hurdles? What are your barriers? What are the mazes that you're trying to work through? So what you guys are saying here, these examples are pretty common, I would say, but not an important obstacles, absolutely, no doubt. And they block all of us, frankly, at some time, and more often than we hope. But they're not insurmountable. We have to just be strategic. And we get strategic by evaluating the strength of your obstacles. So for the cat lovers here, don't get offended, but I'm going to use these cats to help us with the next part, which is evaluating the strength of our obstacles. So ranging between a newborn house cat to big lion on the plains of Africa, in other words, not an obstacle at all, to a very big obstacle that probably will prevent me from doing nearly anything. How big are the obstacles you have identified? You can also just use 1 to 5 if you're not a cat person, 1 being the small kitten and 5 being the lion. So I'll give you a moment to reflect upon this as well. So rating and evaluating the strength of your obstacles that are in front of you. So if it's time, if it is money, if it is fear, where does it fall? Feel free to share in the comments if you wish. No worries if you want to pull this one back. What are those barriers and how strong are they really? I'm glad that you like the cat example, Bobby. Okay. So we've evaluated our obstacles, understood how strong they actually are. We've audited the state of our values activation in general. We've identified and evaluated the strength of obstacles, as I was saying, and now we're going to create the action plan. So when doing this for the first time, I'd advise very simple actions that can be executed within a week. So subsequent plans can be, planned over a longer period of time, but you want to keep this front of mind in the first week and learn where you need to adjust and maybe new barriers that arise that you didn't originally expect or want to acknowledge. So every value you've identified, so minimum at least 1 in this case, come up with 1 action that you can do to activate your values better than before that takes into account the obstacles, but overcomes them, even if in a small way. So let's share in the comments this time. Let's share the actions that you want to take this week to activate the values that avoid or overcome the obstacles that you've identified. I'll give you a minute here to work on that as well. Maybe the obstacles for you right now are the big snow drifts and big snowflakes that we see outside in Toronto here. But how can we overcome them? What's an action? Let's get some comments here. Book a workout with my wife and do it every Thursday. Combines health and social. That is a perfect example, Bobby. That's a perfect example. That's what I call a synergistic example. So I'm triggering Kayvon here with the weather example because the weather's holding them back from going to the gym. So that's the obstacle. How do we overcome it? Bobby's was a great example, not only because it focuses on the activity part, but I think one thing that we think about when it comes to values activation more broadly is how can you do a number of things at once? How can you do synergistic work, right? So for Bobby, one of the areas we were talking about before was the personal growth and health area. That was the one he wanted to work on in terms of being more active. So that's important, right? But he combines it with going with his wife, which is something that works on his relationships as well, right? So he's kind of getting two birds with one stone in that case. So it does make it more realistic and more achievable, like he said, but it also makes it something that is more achievable in the broad sense of the term as well, that you're getting more things done at the same time, that thriving is going to come out of that more likely. You can't just do a bunch of discrete tasks. They have to kind of come together some way. And it could be as simple as the example that Bobby talked about. We'll see if we can get one more example here. For those of you who's actually struggling a bit, I'm going to give you an example that maybe some of you might just need more time to do this sort of thing. But here is an example that is a pretty universal way to activate your values better than before. And it is by serving others. So start by choosing someone that you want to serve this week. It could be anyone, family, friends, your partner, colleagues, a deserving stranger. Choose one action that you can do in the next 7 days that will be serving them, even in the smallest of ways. And then set a time a week from now that you can reflect upon how this went, where you're uninterrupted, and you can ask yourself these questions. How'd you feel about it? How do you think that service aligns with your values? What is the next act of service I will undertake? So let's get everyone to do this one. Let's get everyone in the comments, since it's so simple. So even if you've done something on the previous slide, write in the comments the person you will serve, the act you will do, and the time later this week you will reflect upon it. Let's get everyone in the comments start to contribute on that front. Okay. All right. Okay, that's an interesting example, Bobby. That's great. So sometimes we have to be conscious of how we serve ourselves, right? It's not always necessarily someone else that we're serving. Sometimes we neglect ourselves in sort of a self-care way. So that's a different way to reframe it, Bobby. So thank you. That's a good one, Bobby. That's another good one. So Bobby is on a roll here. So his example of serving his kids and cooking a healthy meal together with them and doing that on this weekend and then be able to reflect upon it afterwards. Bobby, if I were giving out extra ribbons today, I would give you a nice, shiny participation ribbon for sure. Okay, just give me another moment here to get a couple more comments in. Nina's starting with hers. Yeah, Seth with a great example. Very simple. Person you want to serve, his dad, act, shoveling snow. That is a big deal right now for sure. I know that he is out in Nova Scotia and they're getting dumped on right now, similar to Toronto. And later today, this is perfect. It's a great example. It's as simple as, we don't have to make it complicated. That is the point of this exercise. Do not have to make it complicated. Obviously, as we go into more depth, sometimes we get at the more complex and challenging parts of values activation. But at the surface level, there are simple things that we can do to make progress and build some momentum. This is great, guys. Kayvon's got a contribution here around physical activity. This is great. Okay. So that, my friends, that is the framework. Remember, the hardest part of all this is just getting started and taking action. That has been our focus today, giving you something so straightforward that you can take action right away and create some momentum for yourself. Of course, the values activation journey does require a lot of work and depth over time, but it doesn't mean that you can't get some quick wins now. And we kind of seen some great examples of that in the comments of quick wins, simple things that you can do to get the ball rolling. And now you have a framework. You have a framework to get it all started. So while today was a shorter form version, we also can support you with even more ways in if you found this valuable. And let's face it, with the internet these days, it's easy to find nearly any content that you want to learn about. But here's the kicker. Will you do it? Will you go deeper than you normally do? Will you hold yourself accountable? Will you see through your blind spots? The answer for me to these questions has been no, and that is why I have set up an in-person workshop and content for an in-person workshop, and now I'm going to be delivering it in collaboration between Our Better Selves and Discover Your Personal Brand next Wednesday, February 20th at 6 p.m. at the Wilfrid Laurier University office in Toronto. I want to emphasize here too that the best values activation does not happen by yourself. You need people around you. You need the context, the systems, and so much more. And this workshop is focused on taking what we learned and what we will implement from this workshop today, or from this webinar today, and taking that all to another level, because you will have the people around you who care about your success supporting you, including the other attendees. If this is something you're interested in, those of you who are on the webinar today are eligible for a special discount until 5 p.m. tonight, 50% off the workshop. 50% off the workshop, and access this discount by liking and commenting "I'm in" on the LinkedIn post that will go up after this webinar on my LinkedIn, which we'll get some info on in a moment. You comment and like "I'm in," and you'll get info followed up after that. And I would be remiss if I didn't say and then didn't mention the Our Better Selves change agent community here as well. And things like this webinar, the workshop, and so much of the content is included in this community. But more importantly, you're connecting and thriving with other values-driven change agents, people you will get support from, care from, a kick in the butt from. But most of all, you'll get what you need to start your change journey and thrive. It is an exclusive community, and we only take a few in at a time. But if you think this might be a fit for you and you're interested, check ourbetterselves.org/join us for more. We need more caring, compassionate, thoughtful, and driven change agents to solve the big challenges we face in the world. And we hope that you will be one of them. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it, make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. And it only does so as the unintended consequence of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as a byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. We often talk about success as if it's some sort of destination, some trophy, some peak of a mountain. And in some discrete cases, that might be true. But when we think about life and thriving, it is much simpler, but also much harder than that. And Frankl captures that essence in this quote. I firmly believe that when we do the work on our values, we are doing work that is good in and of itself, and for you and for the people around you. And we also know that this is a long game that we're playing, that we must realize that sometimes it takes a long time for our sprout to break through the surface. But if we do the work, we can reap the benefits of compound interest, which will see us flourish like the bamboo tree in whatever way flourish manifests for you. Most of all, doing this work allows you to look in the mirror every day and say, I'm not perfect, but I am working to live a life based on my values, one that makes me, the people around me, and the broader world better. That is something to be proud of. So you can find me online in these places: LinkedIn, ourbetterselves.org, and Facebook, including the LinkedIn post for the discount that will be up later on today. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you all for working through our initial technical glitches. I'm looking forward to seeing the great things that you all do, because we need each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Okay. Excellent, guys. I see a few questions that have built up here, and I want to continue the conversation in our Q&A. So let me catch up on a couple of the questions. Thank you very much for the positive feedback. Of course, I appreciate that. I appreciate, again, all you guys being involved here. Let me just skim back and see. Let's see here. Bobby had a question about the webinar itself. So we will be doing a LinkedIn, as I said, a LinkedIn message, a LinkedIn post that will have a talk about this workshop. And if you click on it, comment on it, I'm in, we will send you the information on how to get registered from there. Any other questions? Just skimming through here. Again, thank you everyone for the positive comments. How do we avoid failing on the small win? That's a good question, Bobby. So I think the question here is, what do you consider a small win? So I like to think about small wins in this context as making them so small and so incrementally small that there's no excuse for you not to do it. So it could be as simple as saying, I'm going to do a run every single day. You know, every morning when I get up, I'm going to go for a run. It could be as simple as saying, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to put my running shoes on. Okay. It could be as simple as that. And that is the way that you kind of start what's called sort of a feedback loop, a positive feedback loop when it comes to habit formation, which I can help and provide resources on later on if anyone wishes. But that's a great way to kind of start that process. It's really about making sure you can do something that is achievable. It has to be super achievable. And if it's not achievable, you probably have done one of two things. Number one, you didn't adequately think about the obstacles that we talked about earlier and how to get around them or overcome them. Or number two, it just might be too much for you to bite off and chew right now, right? So when we're thinking about quick wins, that's sort of the two frameworks. Obviously, when we go deeper, we're going at things that are more fundamental, and that kind of gets us past the quick win part a little bit. But again, our focus today was on more on the quick wins and getting momentum. So that's a good question. Any additional questions? Okay, I noticed that we are just over the 1 o'clock hour. So I appreciate, again, everyone making the time today to join us on this webinar, and appreciate your participation and everything that you've done. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you all soon. All the best. Bye-bye.